Well, hello there and good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. I'm Frost PDP, and today we're playing Crusader Kings 2 When the World Stopped Making Sense. This is a sort of introductory episode to how the Eastern Roman Empire's military works in this mod, and I say the way it works because, at least according to this build, which is with Conclave, and I think it's 0.98, I've been playing this for some time now. So some things may be like natural to me, but I've gotten used to this 103.16 ducat income. And if you look at it, you'll notice, as soon as I click on my primary title and you look at my income, my yearly is 1,776, which is funny for an episode about military stuff. And that my yearly total of expenses is really high. I mean, I'm upkeeping 463.87 mercenaries. Right? That's a ton of mercs. But how is that even economically sound? Well, if you look at the mercenaries, most of these groups only cost 46 to raise and 4.5 to maintain. So that's 4,000 troops you can keep. Almost like retinue, which I have a cap of 20,000 on. In fact, I need to make more soon-ish. I mean, I guess I'm not quite at 20 yet. Or I'm at literally 20, but oh yeah, okay. So I'm using 19.5. 8. So I need something that's 0.42? Okay. So that's math. So, looking at this, you could see that, okay, I could dismiss them and then raise them when there's another crisis, which could be in like a week. Or I can just keep them raised and not care and siphon off 400 bucks and 400 bucks. But I'm making so much money that it's really worth it because it allows me to keep some troops up here, like these two legions, and they are legions, and which I'll get into a little more detail with later. They took over this little territory for me, and I have another two legions over here taking over some territory for me. My threat level, by the way, is, as you would expect, through the roof. I'm having difficulty blobbing a little bit, but not particularly. I know that's not necessarily how the game should be played, but that's how I play it because I'm, crazy. I even have a little province over here. I've got 8,000 mercs. I mean, look, this isn't levy. These are just troops sitting around like a retinue. Well, that's just it, right? The ancient Roman Empire had legions. It had a standing army, kind of like America does. And they were maybe volunteer troops, maybe some conscripts if there's a really big war. But, they had a professional army that would march around and put down rebellions. Like, oh, you 2,300 dudes want to fight? Well, our capital has, 10,000 men. And the 1,000 is an interesting number because Roman legions were usually organized by about the thousands. I know that's kind of like the myth of it anyway, right? Like, obviously, there are some episodes on YouTube of, I think it's called Historia Civilis. I'll include a link if I can. They talk about like how actual Roman legions and military configurations are arranged, but you think of the centurion, and he's the guy in charge of 100 men, and it's all sort of like a metric system devised, 10 by 100 by 1,000. And a legion would be like 1,000 men strong, and that's what you learn in early history classes at least, or that's what I learned. And, you'd have 24 legions. Well, okay, that's not quite how the world works. I would recommend Lindy Beige's video on battalions to understand a little more about how you organize military units, but for the sake of the game, look at what all these guys are. They're legions. The Legion of Valentis Theoborm now. I have the Roman culture, or Greek culture, but it's close to Roman, which can organize the Roman legions. And if I go to the intrigue button, I can take a romantic interest in a courtier. I didn't even know I could do that. I can perform a great sacrifice. I have to be at peace, which obviously you want to do because it's just like, hey, pay a bunch of money for huge leverageable effects, for 3 years, which could be useful if you have trouble. Patron diet deity. But oh, look up here. I have the Legion Iova, the Legion Herculia. Now, I don't know if these names are real, but they cost 2,000 to raise up. And what you can do in this mod is organize and vassalize historical legions based on Roman provinces that you have some control over, I guess. Or unless this one just, like, these are the last two. I need Scythian Minor to have all of these two, right? So I can raise 2 legions. And those legions are, as you may have seen, extremely cheap to upkeep. 2.6. Now, a normal mercenary band with 7,000 men, 65. I'm thinking in the thousands and the hundreds again. It's 65. Not 6.5 like the 2.6 here, but 65. It's another decimal space over. And that's really powerful. Now, I don't know if that's particularly well balanced. I mean, 19 dudes is 0.51. I'm assuming these groups will grow some, I hope, because that's pathetic. But my point is, legions in this mod of the game are kind of like just a standing army. They're almost exactly what you get in Europa Universalis 4. You know, you have your standing army, and then you can either hire more or whatever. So this is sort of like murking it up in Crusader Kings 2, which I know is like a strategy. I'm not sure it was supposed to be like that originally. I'm pretty confident Crusader Kings 2 started off as a game based around opinion. Like, my wife's opinion of me is high, so she would give me many troops, being she's my vassal and all. She only likes me because of heavily improved relations, however. That's sweet. And I allowed her to marry me. That's awesome. She actually has no feelings towards me whatsoever. So, that's cool. But we're both shy, so I guess that makes sense. Shrug here. Shy and ambitious. Perfect. My character's awesome. So, my point is, in a game that, at least once upon a time, was theoretically about holy wars and a particular period in time, yeah, you know, through user mods as well as the base game going back to Charlemagne's age, we've covered a lot. Now, I know this is big blue Venezia, and you're wondering, like, what the hell happened. It's just because, even though I roleplayed in the series that I'm doing, it's just a game thing. It just glitched. You know, it's like, oh, it saw the Venezia title was available, so it took that instead of Roman Empire. And what's funny is, and I should say Western Roman Empire, because the mod has them split into 2. What's funny is somehow one of my characters inherited Venice. So it doesn't really matter. It's like, alright, cool, I own it. But anyway, but you know, the Eastern Roman, or I should say just the Roman Empire in general, extended, you have to remember, over a space that was like from Hadrian's Wall in the north to like Carthago Nova in the west to Carthage in Africa, wherever that is, to Alexandria, to Constantinople, to Jerusalem. Remember, the story of the Bible is in the Middle East, which today we think of as such a faraway place, but according to some of our oldest heritage, at least in the Western world, it goes back to Rome. I mean, it truly does. All of this area was united under one country, and it was all speaking the same language, and there were some pretty ancient, horrific reasons for that, like the movement of tribes such as the Lombards and the Thuringians, I suppose, and you know, the formation of the Frankish peoples coming in and taking over France. Like, it's hard to think sometimes of just how massive the world is, and the game Crusader Kings 2 has expanded greatly in my time playing it. I'm a relatively recent convert from a war between the Western Christian Middle Ages and the Eastern Muslim Middle Ages. It's including India. I mean, I haven't even talked about India, which, by the way, in case you forgot, there's a guy named Alexander the Great who started off around Macedonia, which I think is in this neighborhood. It's in Greece, certainly in the Balkans. It's called Alexandria for a reason. If this game went back to 300 BC with a proper mod team, it could be done. I'm not saying it would be perfect, I'm saying it could be done, and I know for a fact that it has been done in Europa Universalis 4, right? So I hear a lot of people, I want to wrap this up, and I'm getting a little off topic from Legions here, but I want to wrap this up by saying, and if you want to, by the way, a really good old strategy game, Legions, Diplomacy in the Middle Ages, or Ancient Ages, or whatever it is, it was a really old Mindscape game for DOS. No, I'm kidding. You know, history is the sort of thing where, when you look back at it, Alexander the Great made it out to, if I'm not mistaken, this little here river called, I don't know, the Ganges? Is that the Ganges? I'm not 100% sure. I know my history a little better than I know my geography, right? Like, I know this is an important river, but I don't know exactly what it's called off the top of my head every single day of my life, right? I'm playing a video game here. I'm not teaching my classes. I get it. Like, this is an alternate reality game, but it's really interesting to think that once upon a time, yes, this whole world was a Mediterranean world. It wasn't even really called a Western. It was called Mediterranean world, classical. So the fact that Crusader Kings 2 has changed over time, I see this on Reddit a lot. I made a suggestion video where a lot of people said, "Oh, you're gonna make the game more like EU4." Well, if you don't want to change the game, you don't have to change the game. You know, like, you could play the older versions. I'm pretty sure that's doable. In fact, Paradox is one of the few companies that makes that doable. There are plenty of old games, like Master of Orion, where once you patch it, it's kind of like that's it. You can't roll back easily. You have to reinstall, and that's just a hassle that most people don't want to go through, because then if you have the day and age of auto-patching, you're even worse off. What do you do, right? Well, that's the answer. Oh, this is very, very snowy-looking country. This is all derived from the same game engine. You know, the Clausewitz engine? Stellaris is supposedly derived from that. Now, I haven't played Stellaris yet because I'm a masochist, and I'm, you know, still deciding if I want to buy it because it would replace Crusader Kings 2 time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get much gaming time, and I like this game. So do I want to replace it? I don't know. I play Doom, and I can't stream that because it's busted, so I'm really just playing the campaign through once, and I'm not going to bother with the multiplayer. I know that's kind of a consequence of the AMD bug unless that gets fixed, which, I mean, I'll test it again maybe one more time, but anyway. History changes over time, as does the direction of a suggestion video. And as does the series of a game, you know? It evolves. You have that issue with World of Warcraft and Nautilus, so hey, it's not just Paradox. You know, it's not just mods, and it's not just player suggestions saying, hey, this feature in this other game is really cool, and could you incorporate something like that, considering it's all even on the same engine. It's still a very different game, but, and I've even made jokes about it, when they added the Horse Lords, they made it population and manpower, and that's strictly EU4, and they added coalitions, basically, defensive packs, and that's strictly EU4, and I'm saying, like, these aren't unheard of things in history, so A, you just got yourself a very nice lesson about when the world stopped making sense, and B, I hope I just made your video game world stop making sense for a minute and start making better sense. So thank you for joining me. If you enjoy these videos, hit the like, subscribe buttons, and all these obligatory statements, and until next time, as always, La Paz.